Are you taking an SAT subject test soon and wondering what can I do to be a little bit better prepared? Well, then this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to go through 3 quick tips for the SAT subject tests. Before we get going, I recommend that everybody subscribe to our channel and check out SupertutorTV.com, especially if you're prepping for the ACT. We have an awesome new best ACT prep course ever that you can check out there. You can also sign up for our mailing list at SupertutorTV.com/subscribe. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get into my 3 quick tips for the SAT subject test. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a quick overview and give you some tips for how to approach the exam and how to study for it. So let's get started. The first tip that I want to share with you is one fact that very much will affect your approach on the SAT subject test, and that is the fact that wrong answers give you a penalty on SAT subject tests. This is different from the SAT and from the ACT. The SAT used to penalize students for guessing. It no longer does. The ACT does not penalize students for guessing, but SAT subject tests do. And that works into what your strategy should be when you approach the questions. So basically what that means is that if you have no idea on a question, you really shouldn't put an answer choice, because anytime you put an answer that's wrong, you are deducted 1/4 of a point. So let's talk about what your strategy should be given that 1/4 of a point docking, okay? So you might think statistically, well, if I can eliminate one of the 5 answer choices on my SAT subject test, right? Then I'm down to 4. I have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right, and I only get minus 1/4 of a point. So over time, everything should even out, and I can guess as soon as I eliminate 1. And while that would be true if you had a large sample size, because your test itself is what we call a small sample size, and maybe you're only guessing on a couple of questions, that strategy can actually be very problematic and can lead to very erratic scores, meaning you can get pretty unlucky, and if you get unlucky a little bit, it can totally tank your score. And this is the kind of situation in which you can't really afford to totally tank your score. So what that means is I'm going to have you look at it in a little bit of a different way. And here's that different way. That different perspective on when you should guess and when you shouldn't guess is look at the probability of whether you're more likely to gain points or lose points when you're guessing. Okay? Stay with me here. If you have it down to 4 and you know one of those answers is totally wrong, right? And you have it down to 4, I prefer not guessing, because you have a 3 out of 4 chance of getting it wrong. That's a 75% chance that you will lose points. But you also have a 25% chance of getting it right. Yes? I like to see at least 2 knocked out and a little bit of gut power behind one of my 3 answer choices before I start guessing instead of leaving it blank. Now, this also varies by test. If you're taking the math exam, for example, it's very likely that you either know the answer because you got it or you have no idea, right? And there's no way to infer what the answer is going to be because it's a big, long, complicated word problem or whatever it is. Sometimes if you have a geometry problem or something that there's a little bit of logic to, you can kind of narrow it down to a couple. Then maybe it's okay to guess, but otherwise on the math, I tend to leave things blank if I really have no time to do it or no idea how to do it. And the truth is you can actually get a perfect score on the math and skip a few problems. How many problems you can skip really depends on the curve of the math exam, and the College Board is not the most opaque in terms of releasing data on SAT subject tests because they do recycle them over the course of years. They don't always rate anyone for every test date, and so it's hard to know exactly what that curve will be or in the past what it has been, but I can tell you for sure that you could very likely skip and not answer at all 2, maybe even 3, maybe even 4 questions and still get a perfect score on the SAT Math 2 subject test. That being said, the strategy changes a little bit for other exams. If you're taking a language exam or an English exam or even history, something like that, where you might have an inkling of what the right answer is or you have a little bit of that gut working for you, I find that sometimes answering those questions when they're a little bit of a guess can work in your favor a little bit more, because you're not actually just down to 4. You're down to 4 with some gut behind number 1 because you think you kind of remember it, but it's hard to completely remember, right? So in those cases, sometimes guessing a little bit isn't as problematic. But like I said, never guess unless you can confidently eliminate at least 1. And most of the time what I'm thinking about is if I have it down to 2, I have just as much of a chance of getting it right as getting it wrong. And if I get it right, there's a big reward. So when I get it down to 2, I'm definitely guessing. When I don't have it down to 2, I'm kind of evaluating the situation and trying to figure out like, how much gut do I have behind this answer choice? If I have a little bit of gut, maybe I'm gonna guess, but if I don't, I'm just gonna leave it, because otherwise, like I said, there's too much risk. It's too small of a sample size to take that risk, okay? And that brings me to the second thing that I recommend that all of you do, which is if you are taking an SAT subject test, it's really important that you at least take one practice exam. This is a different game than the regular SAT. It's a lot easier to prep for the regular SAT because there's a lot more resources out there, and there's Khan Academy, there's tons of free materials. There are not tons of free materials for the subject test. In fact, there's barely any material for the subject test that's free. So I'm going to show you where the free material is, and that is if you go to collegereadiness.collegeboard.org. Hopefully at some point, Khan Academy is going to put some stuff up, but right now you have to go to collegereadiness.collegeboard.org. And you'll see here, there's links to practice materials and information on all of these subject tests. That being said, this is not enough for anybody who's a serious prepper, and you need to get more. So what I'm going to go through is how do you get a hold of official materials and what are the official materials that you should get. So there are some subjects of SAT subject test that have prep books available that are specific to these specific tests. There is a book for Math Level 1. There is a book for Math Level 2, there's a book for biology, for chemistry, for physics, and for US history. So for those subjects, I recommend that you get the official guide that's just subject specific. Now, what if you're taking an exam that I haven't listed off yet? What if you're taking Korean or whatever it is, right? What then? Oops, there's like some random books on Korean, right? But where is the official guide? There is no official guide, right? So you're in trouble. So what I would say is you still need an official practice exam, but the place that you're going to get that is the big book. So this is the big book. Essentially, this has one copy of a test for each one of the subject tests. Also, if you're cramming, this is a good book to get. But here's the caveat, and here's what you guys should know. The tests that are in this book overlap with the tests that are in the subject-specific guides. So for example, if you're doing Math Level 2, you really should go out and buy that Math Level 2 book with 4 practice tests, because those are like gold, right? The sad thing is that the one Math Level 2 practice test that's in this big book is the same practice test that's in that book that has 4 tests in it. It's a repeat test. So you're not going to gain an additional test in Math 2 by going to this book, which is kind of annoying. So if you can, stick to the subject guides, but if you're in a subject that's not in a subject guide, then go and get this book. Cool? Okay, so get some official materials, go over your answers, check it out. Again, you can also really pay attention to the scoring grids on these, because that's going to tell you sort of ballpark how much you can omit with that whole omit strategy, which was my first tip that I had, okay? So now the other thing that I'm going to say is these books don't necessarily have amazing strategies because they're made by the test makers. So where do you go for that? My recommendation is if you're prepping for one of these subject tests, that it's really a good idea to get a hold of some other books as well from other sources. And you can find a lot of different ones on Amazon. Generally, if you're between Kaplan and Princeton and Barron's, for most subjects, Barron's is a little bit harder, so that's what I tend to recommend to my students more often. It does vary a little bit subject to subject, but that's what I would say. And then when you get into some of the topics, like Korean, for example, there's tons and tons of self-published books on the Korean, and there's like some different brands and things. And we'll try to give you some recommendations on how to find a good prep book. But that's my third point, is that make sure you get some outside help for these tests and not just go to the test makers. I would try to get some tips and strategies from other books. That's always a good idea. With subject tests, I usually recommend that students are prepping anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks before the exam. And then too, like I said in my other video on SAT subject tests, it's good to align the test with your class schedule so that you can double study when you can. But I know sometimes that doesn't work out. So that's about it. My basic advice is take practice tests, go over what you got wrong, study as much as you can from books that are available, and make sure you are strategic about omitting versus guessing. And that's about it that I have for basic tips for the SAT subject tests. I hope you guys found this helpful or valuable. If so, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our mailing list at SupertutorTV.com/subscribe, and we will keep you up to date of anything new and awesome going on here with Super Tutor TV. Thanks, guys. like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and I will see all of you later. Bye-bye.